The world gets quiet at a certain hour. Lights go out. Notifications slow. The noise thins. Most people call this rest. They sink into couches, into scrolling, into distraction. They tell themselves they've earned it. They tell themselves tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow always sounds disciplined. Tonight feels harmless. But this is the hour that reveals everything. When nothing is demanded of you, who are you? When no one is watching, no one applauding, no one expecting effort, what do you choose? Silence is not empty. It is exposing. In the quiet, the mind starts to speak, not with wisdom, but with cravings. It asks for comfort. It asks to be entertained. It asks to be spared effort, spared resistance, spared growth. Most people obey without realizing they're being trained. This is how weakness is rehearsed. Softly, repeatedly, night after night. The Stoics understood this moment well. They didn't fear stillness. They used it. They knew that when the world goes quiet, the real work begins. Not dramatic work, not visible work, inner work. This is the time when discipline is either strengthened or surrendered. When a mind either learns command or learns dependence. While others rest their bodies, you can train your attention. While others escape their thoughts, you can observe yours. While others numb themselves, you can sharpen yourself. Nothing heroic happens here. No transformation montage. Just a choice. Again and again. To sit with discomfort instead of running from it. To stay present instead of drifting. To prepare instead of postponing. The night doesn't ask much of you. It only asks who you are when no one is asking anything at all. This is where the path quietly begins. Comfort rarely announces itself as an enemy. It arrives softly, reasonably. It speaks in a calm voice that sounds like care. You worked hard today. You deserve this. Just rest. Just relax. Just this once. And because it sounds gentle, it's trusted. But comfort is always teaching. Every moment you surrender effort, it gives a lesson. It teaches the mind that resistance is optional, that discipline is negotiable, that discomfort is something to avoid, not something to understand. Over time, these lessons stack. The Stoics warned about this without drama. They didn't say comfort was evil. They said it was dangerous when left unquestioned. Because what you repeatedly choose, you become prepared for. If you always choose ease, you become fragile. If you always choose escape, you become dependent. If you always choose comfort, you become untrained. Most people don't notice the change happening. They still feel capable, still feel in control. But the moment pressure arrives, something breaks. Focus collapses. Emotions surge. Patience disappears. The mind, never trained to stand firm, starts looking for exits. This is how comfort reveals its true cost. It doesn't weaken you loudly. It weakens you quietly, when nothing is at stake, so you won't notice. The world encourages this. It markets rest without intention, pleasure without restraint, relief without effort. It tells you life should feel easy. And when it doesn't, it tells you something is wrong. The Stoic response is different. Difficulty is not a mistake. Discomfort is not an error. Resistance is not cruelty. They are signals, invitations, training tools. When you choose effort where comfort is available, you reclaim authority over yourself. You remind the mind that it serves, not commands. You teach it patience. You teach it endurance. You teach it to stay steady even when it wants to flee. Comfort trains you too. The only question is what it's training you for. An untrained mind does not stay neutral. It drifts. It reacts. It turns inward and begins to consume itself. Left alone, the mind does not seek truth. It seeks relief. It replays conversations that no longer matter. It imagines futures that may never come. It magnifies small problems into looming threats. It pulls emotion into places where reason should stand. This is not because the mind is broken. It is because it was never taught restraint. Without discipline, thought becomes noise. One thought triggers another. One feeling demands action. The space between impulse and response disappears, and suddenly you are living inside reactions you didn't choose. This is how anxiety grows. This is how anger sharpens. This is how desire takes the wheel. The Stoics understood that suffering often begins before events arrive. The damage is done in anticipation, in interpretation, in the stories the mind tells itself when no one interrupts it. An untrained mind mistakes urgency for importance. It mistakes emotion for truth. It mistakes comfort for safety. And when pressure enters, real pressure, the mind panics. It scrambles. It looks outward for control because it never learned to govern itself. This is why most people feel exhausted even when nothing is happening. Their mind is always running, always reacting, always defending imaginary threats. They're fighting battles that never asked to be fought. Training the mind is not about silencing thought. It is about placing it under command, learning when to engage, learning when to let go, learning that not every thought deserves attention and not every feeling deserves obedience. Until then, the mind will continue to turn against its owner, not out of malice, but out of neglect. Real training is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for recognition. It leaves no visible proof that anything is happening at all. From the outside, it looks like nothing. From the inside, it changes everything. The Stoics never chased visible strength. They trained what could not be seen. Judgment, restraint, endurance, the ability to remain steady while the world pulled in every direction. This kind of training doesn't impress crowds. It impresses reality. You don't practice it when life is dramatic. You practice it when life is ordinary. When you want to speak, but choose silence. When you want to react, but choose pause. When you feel discomfort and decide to stay. No one claps for this. No one knows you resisted an impulse. No one sees the moment you chose discipline over relief. That is the point. Invisible training removes dependence on validation. You stop needing approval to behave with strength. You stop waiting for ideal conditions to act with clarity. The Stoics believe that the mind should be trained the way a soldier trains before war. Not during chaos, but before it arrives. Through repetition, through exposure, through voluntary resistance. Small acts, done consistently, without drama. Sitting with your thoughts instead of drowning them out. Accepting boredom without reaching for distraction. Letting discomfort pass without immediately solving it. Each moment is a quiet repetition, a strengthening of inner posture. This is how self-command is built, not by force, but by familiarity. The mind learns that it does not need to obey every urge. It learns patience. It learns trust and restraint. And slowly, something changes. The noise loses its authority. The impulses lose their urgency. The mind becomes less of a battlefield and more of a tool. No one will notice this transformation until the day pressure arrives. Then the difference becomes obvious. Rest is not the enemy. Loss of control is. Most people confuse the two. They collapse into rest as an escape, not a recovery. They hand the mind over to whatever feels easiest, screens, noise, indulgence, and call it self-care. But when rest is unconscious, it doesn't restore. It dulls. The body may pause, but the mind becomes weaker. True rest is deliberate. It has borders. It has intention. It is chosen, not fallen into. The Stoics understood this distinction clearly. They rested without surrendering command. To them, rest was a tool used to sharpen judgment, not silence it. When you rest without awareness, the mind drifts back to impulse. It forgets discipline. It forgets restraint. It grows used to stimulation and uncomfortable with stillness. Then, when effort is required again, resistance feels heavier than it should. This is why many feel tired even after resting. Nothing was restored. Control was simply abandoned for a while. But when rest is governed, it strengthens rather than softens. You choose when to stop. You choose when to resume. You remain present even in ease. The mind learns balance instead of dependency. Stillness becomes recovery, not decay. The Stoic does not punish themselves with endless effort, nor do they disappear into comfort. They stand between the two, alert even in rest, calm even in motion. Because mastery is not proven by how hard you push. It is proven by whether you can stop without losing yourself. Discipline is not forged in rare moments of intensity. It is built quietly in the hours that look insignificant. The mind is shaped by what you do when nothing dramatic is happening. How you wake up, how you wait, how you respond to irritation, delay, boredom. These moments seem too small to matter until they become your default state. The Stoics trained here on purpose. They understood that character is rehearsed in the ordinary. Not when life is demanding excellence, but when it is offering excuses. The choice to be deliberate in these moments is what separates control from chaos. You feel it when you choose to begin even though motivation is absent. When you hold your tongue instead of proving a point. When you finish what you said you would finish, even though no one is checking. Each decision is small, almost forgettable, but the mind remembers. It learns that action does not depend on mood. It learns that emotions can be present without being obeyed. It learns that consistency is stronger than intensity. This is how reliability is built, not just outwardly, but inwardly. You begin to trust yourself. You know that when pressure comes, you will not negotiate with weakness. You've already practiced choosing firmness in moments that offered no reward. Most people wait for the right feeling to act. The Stoic acts and lets the feeling follow or fade. Over time, these ordinary acts compound. The mind becomes less dramatic, less reactive, less interested in shortcuts. It starts to expect discipline the way muscles expect resistance. There's no single moment where you suddenly feel transformed. There is only the quiet realization that you are steadier than before, and that steadiness did not arrive by accident. Pressure reveals what preparation hides. When difficulty arrives, there is no time to think about philosophy, no space to search for strength. The moment demands a response, and whatever you have trained is what answers. This is where most people unravel. They panic not because the situation is unbearable, but because their mind has never learned to stay still underweight. Emotions rush forward unchecked. Words spill out. Decisions are made in haste and regretted in quiet. But a trained mind moves differently. It does not rush to interpret. It does not inflate the moment. It does not confuse urgency with importance. Because it has been here before, many times in smaller ways. It has practiced discomfort in silence. It has endured boredom without escape. It has learned to pause when the instinct was to react. So when real pressure arrives, it feels familiar. Heavy, yes, but not overwhelming. While others look outward for something to blame or someone to save them, you remain inwardly ordered. You assess. You choose. You act without noise. This calm is not passivity. It is readiness. People mistake stillness for weakness until they see it under strain. Then they understand. The quiet ones are not calm because life is easy. They are calm because they prepared when it was easy. Chaos exposes the difference instantly. Some collapse under emotion. Some demand control they never earned. Some lose themselves completely, and some stand steady, not because they are fearless, but because they are trained. In those moments, you won't feel proud. You won't feel superior. You will simply move with clarity while others are pulled apart by urgency. That is the reward of invisible work. Calm is not something you find at the end of the journey. It is something you earn along the way. After the discipline, after the restraint, after the quiet choices no one witnessed and no one rewarded, calm arrives not as excitement, but as relief, the kind that cannot be shaken by circumstance. When a mind is trained, life loses its power to provoke. Not because problems disappear, but because they no longer dictate your inner state. You stop living at the mercy of events. You stop negotiating with every emotion that appears. This is the freedom most people are chasing without realizing it. They think peace comes from control over outcomes, over people, over timing. But the Stoics knew better. The only peace that lasts is control over response. When you have trained your mind while others rested, something subtle changes. You no longer rush. You no longer need to prove. You no longer fear silence or stillness. You can stand in uncertainty without needing to escape it. Nothing can take this from you. Not loss, not insult, not delay, not chaos, because it was built internally where no one else has access. This is not about becoming cold or detached from life. It is about becoming anchored, present without being pulled, engaged without being consumed. You still feel, you still care, but you're no longer ruled. In a world that reacts instantly and loudly, this kind of calm is rare, and rarity carries weight. It speaks without words. It influences without force. This is what it means to train the mind, not to dominate the world, but to stand unshaken within it. This is the Stoic response, where silence becomes strength